G'day, Bomber fans. As promised, I have got one final mock draft for you guys. It's not even really a mock draft, is it? Because I'm not going to be selecting players based on who I think clubs should be selecting. This today is a prediction, and I am pooping my pants. Realistically, this draft is so hard to digest. It is so hard to dissect. No one has a Scooby-Doo what's going to happen. It's me predicting this is going to go wrong. I know it. We all know that every mock draft is going to go wrong. So let's just own it. Let's just own it and laugh at ourselves after we, see how wrong we were with our predictions. Also, for context, I am recording this before Cal Toomey has released his mock draft. He's probably going to release it, during this recording. I'm recording this after I did my video yesterday. As you can see, I'm not double dipping outfits. I would never do that. I'm also going to be using Pommy and Oz's unbelievable draft simulator. This algorithm system thing is just, it's fantastic. I don't know how he's done it. He is an absolute legend. Go give him, right now, go to one of Pommy and Oz's videos and comment, "I love you, Pommy," from Felix, because this thing is just incredible. I'm going to leave a link for it in the description below so you guys can play around with it, because I've spent too many hours on it. So yeah, as you can see, we've got all the players, we've got the draft board, and we can trade picks, and we're going to do that to start because we know that there is going to be some trades. Essendon are going to trade for pick 9. We're going to give away our selections in the 20s. And I'm going to be generous and give us pick 43 back just because I'm so nice. I'm also going to trade North Melbourne and Carlton pick 11 for pick 25 and a future second rounder. Those are the two confirmed, or not confirmed, the trades that we believe are going to occur. There's probably going to be more which will stuff up our mock draft a bit more, but we're not going to worry about any of that. Let's just get straight into it. Okay, pick 1 in the 2025 draft. We know what's happening here. The West Coast Eagles are taking Willem Dersma. There is no other, I don't see any other scenario playing out. Maybe there's a misclick. Maybe they accidentally select someone else. That's possible, I guess. Maybe they trade away pick 1, but why would they do that? They're not going to. They're going to take Willem Dersma, and I think that makes a lot of sense. He is the best player in this draft and an incredible addition to their young list. That's really great for their future. So West Coast are going to be pretty bid heavy early. It just depends on what order they put some of these bids in. I'm going to go Zeke Euland first because that's kind of been what I've done all year, really. I think for the last few months at least, I've been, pretty consistent with Dersma pick 1, Euland pick 2 to the Suns. I just think it makes the most sense. He's the most, is he the best prospect outside of Willem Dersma? Probably, yeah. If he was in the open draft, maybe he's a pick 1 contender. That's how highly rated this guy is, and I think the Eagles are going to act really early to match a bid, to put a bid in to make Gold Coast pay, and the Gold Coast Suns will match a bid because why the hell wouldn't you? It is Zeke Euland. Now, this is where I start to overthink things a bit because you've got things that I think the Eagles should be doing, and then you've got things that they probably will be doing. And as it stands right now, it looks like there's going to be an early bid on Harry Dean. Carlton haven't just traded away picks 9 and 11 for no reason. They're doing it because they believe there is going to be a bid on Harry Dean early. I don't think there's going to be a bid by Richmond. I don't think they'd be going for a key defender at that range. I think it's either West Coast or Essendon putting the bid in. I could be wrong there. But if that's the case and Carlton have moved those picks on for a reason, it must be West Coast with pick 2 or 3. And I'm going to do pick 3. West Coast bid on Harry Dean and the Carlton Blues match it. It feels odd, Harry Dean at pick 3. Like, it really does feel odd. And even when those news stories came out about the Eagles, potentially bidding on Dean early, I thought it was smoke and mirrors. I thought they were, playing a bit of mind games. And maybe they are, to be fair. The same thing happened with Kako last year. I think if we kept those selections, there would have been a bid earlier on Kako that would have eaten up our picks. And maybe now, after Carlton move on those selections, a Harry Dean bid kind of slides through the order a little bit. Either way, I think there's going to be a bid early. Carlton are going to match a bid. I'm not too fussed if I'm wrong about where the bid comes for Harry Dean. Now, there's a few differing takes here what West Coast are going to do with pick 2, or their second pick in the open draft. I've seen quite a few people say that they could go for a Dyson Sharp because he is a midfield prospect and they need midfielders. I don't see it like that. Like, I don't think you'd be going best available talent with pick 2 in the draft, or the second pick in the overall draft, in the open draft, sorry. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. And if I was a West Coast fan and my club did that, I'd probably be pretty annoyed. I think they're going to go Cooper Duff-Tytler. I think that's what I've consistently thought the whole way through. I think, there's been a pretty widespread narrative that it's going to be 1 and 2 for Dersma and Duff-Tytler. Duffma is what I think quite a few people call it. I just think that makes the most sense. I'd be really surprised if the Eagles, surprise us and bring out a Dyson Sharp because he's, just because he's got leadership or because he's, a midfielder, a position they need. You don't go best available. You don't go needs-based or role-specific this early in the draft. I think they're going to go best available talent. And for me, that's Duff-Tytler or more, I'd be less surprised in Sullivan Roby than Dyson Sharp, the way I see it. So, yeah, pick 4, I've got the Eagles getting Cooper Duff-Tytler. 5, I have got the Richmond Tigers putting a bid on Dylan Patterson and the Gold Coast Suns matching. I just think he's a player that the Tigers would really like. Like, I think even if he was in the open draft, I think the Tigers would go for him because he's that, he's that back half speed. He's that Energizer Bunny type player. He's that, rugby footballer. He's a really interesting player, Dylan Patterson, and the Suns are really lucky to get him. But I think he'd be someone that the Tigers absolutely love, so I'm going to have them putting a bid on as soon as they're on the clock. But in the open draft, I think the Tigers they'll do 2 things. I think they go best available early, and that is Sullivan Roby. I think they're going to take Sullivan Roby from under our noses, which is really disappointing, but I just don't see him sliding down the order. But yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. You might say that they drafted heavily with the inside midfielders last year, getting Josh Smiley, getting Sam Lawler. They are both injured. Often I don't think that really plays into it too much. I think more so it's the scope that Sullivan Roby has as a player. I think he's got more upside in other positions. I think he's got a bit more versatility. He's still growing, so he could genuinely be a key position forward, with a bit more height as well. He's got a bit more scope than those other players. Maybe not as much upside as a Sam Lawler type, but there's more scope to his game with Sullivan Roby. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'd love him at Essendon, I really would, and that's the player that I really hope will slide to our picks, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I think the Tigers take him pretty early in the draft. And with pick 7, now this is where you've got a few things that could happen. You've got Xavier Taylor, who I think is the 4th best player in the open pool, and the Tigers should take him. You've got Sam Cumming, who is linked to the Tigers. They actually met him in Mildura, I think today or yesterday at the time of filming. So he's someone who's got some late links to the Tigers, and they have put a lot of work into him. I'm going to go with Sam Grill because they've put a lot more work into him during the year. He's obviously been in their VFL system. I think he was training at the club at one stage as well, through the AFL Academy potentially. They've liked him all year, really, Sam Grill. And look, I wouldn't be surprised if Taylor or Cumming go this early. It could well be one of those players. And the annoying thing about picking Grill is that if he's not taken by Richmond, he goes past Essendon, I think. He probably goes past Melbourne. This is probably his range, Hawthorn North, GWS West Coast. I think that is where Grill would be taken if he wasn't taken by the Tigers at 7. So I'm either really right here in picking Sam Grill, or I'm really, really wrong. That's the risk you're going to take with this specific draft, where teams are going to be, picking players that they like more, because, it's so even around this range. And this is where you see the draft really open up in that regard. There's going to be a few weird bolters here and there, a few players that maybe slide or bolt up the order. I've got the Tigers taking Sam Grill, but I'm not confident at all. Essendon's selections, and I think one of them, or actually, before we do anything, we're going to bid on Dan Annable. I was about to go through the whole draft without bidding on Dan Annable. I think he's either going to be bidded on by the Tigers or Bombers. I think the Bombers are probably a team who would want Dan Annable more. I don't think the Tigers need that rounded midfielder as much. I think they're pretty set in the midfield, especially bringing in, 2 more midfielders as well in Roby and Grill. So I think the Bombers bid on Dan Annable, and the Brisbane Lions obviously match it. But now the Bombers on the open clock, and there's 3 players here that I think we'd be taking in this range. I think it's between Dyson Sharp, Xavier Taylor, and Sam Cumming. I think those 3 are probably the most likely to slide out of the players that we like the most. There is, of course, Farrow and Schubert and Doveston. I'll talk about them later if they're around for our other pick, but I think these 3 are the ones in line for 5 and 6. They're the ones that I'd be surprised if someone outside that range kind of slides in. I think there's 2 of these guys won't be gone early. I don't see why the Tigers would take a Taylor Cumming matchup, and even if they did, it would mean Roby would slide to us anyway. So these are the 3 I'm really looking at, and I'm going to start with Dyson Sharp just because I think he's the most likely to go to Essendon. I don't see why the Tigers would go for a Dyson Sharp in the draft. I know that some Richmond fans have said that he'd be a good option there because of the South Australian links, and they also like Sam Cumming, but I just think I think he's a more suited to the Bombers than the Tigers. They've got midfielders like that. I think Sullivan Roby's scope is higher. If I'm any team really, I'm picking Roby over Dyson Sharp, and I'd love the Tigers to take Sharp so we can take Roby, but I just don't think that's going to be the case. I think he's going to slide to the Bombers pick. I think this is where he starts on the draft, and this is probably where we take him. I think it makes sense. I personally would go with other options, but that's just me. I'm not disappointed if we'd get Dyson Sharp because he's one of the best, midfielders in this draft. But I'd personally go with other options. The option I definitely would go with is Xavier Taylor. I think that's the combo right there, and that makes me feel a lot better about the Dyson Sharp pick. I think if you've got a top 10 pick and you take, just Dyson Sharp, I'd be probably, looking at the other options outside and being a bit jealous of, the other clubs that get them. But if you're getting a high upside Xavier Taylor and a Dyson Sharp, that's a great combo. And you could argue Sam Cumming could be thrown in there as well, but I think that makes more sense, Sharp and Taylor. Even though I personally like Cumming more as a draft prospect over Dyson Sharp, I think this makes more sense. You've got Dyson Sharp, who's a bankable pick. I think he's also, by the way, he's not only a bankable player in this draft, he's a bankable prediction. I think he's the most likely to go to Essendon. But then you've got Xavier Taylor, who, if he slides, is a high upside player that the Bombers would really like as well. So yeah, I really like that combo. This is what I went with on the Pommy and Oz live stream when I did it, and we're doing the same thing. We're running it back. Melbourne up next. I think they just take whoever we don't out of those three. I think they'd be eyeing off Xavier Taylor and Dyson Sharp as well. If we don't take them, they just take Sam Cumming. I think that's what they'll be doing. I think a few clubs in this range will be looking at sliders. We'll be looking at sliders from Richmond's picks. Melbourne will be looking at sliders from our picks, and the slider here is Sam Cumming, so the Melbourne Demons will take him. I'd be really surprised if he gets down to Hawthorn's selections, and if he gets down there, then he's not going any further. So I've got the Demons taking Sam Cumming at pick 11. And then from here, you've got the big bolter in the last few weeks, and look how far back you have to scroll to find him. Cameron Nairn at pick 12. We've got the Melbourne Demons taking him there. It's a really random one. He was, and there's meaning to it. I'm not just doing this because other people think it'll happen. Obviously, that's part of it. But there's been talk about the Demons, wanting Cameron Nairn or being interested in Cameron Nairn. Then he was, of course, invited to the first night of the draft, that's rare because, look at these players on screen. Lindsay, Schubert, Doveston's just been invited, but Lindsay, Schubert, Greaves, Marsh, these guys haven't been invited to the draft, Cameron Nairn has, and he is in many boards, a 30 or 35 ranked player. That's just the reality. I think Cal Toomey had him close to 30 in his form guide. So I've got the Demons taking Cameron Nairn at pick 12, and I think that's going to be the general consensus. And that probably suits the Bombers. It gives us a bit more flexibility with what we can do with our next pick as well. So the Bombers on the board now. I think this is where we look at a few options. So Jacob Farrow and Aiden Schubert have obviously spent a bit of time with the club. We like those two options. I think we'd like Josh Lindsay as well, but I thought we would, but he seems to be sliding down the order a little bit. I'm going to pick someone different. And I think it's because of maybe it's a bit of recency bias with what's been happening in the last few days, but it does seem like Essendon are leaning towards small forwards in this draft. We had Lockie Doveston at the club on Friday. We met with Latrell Pickett, and there's been talk about Pickett being a potential option for this pick. I think it's too high personally. I'm going to draft Lockie Doveston, and that might be rogue. I don't know. It's hard to really know when all this news comes so late and you don't have confirmation of it from other people. I might be really wrong there, but I just think the Bombers drafting Lockie Doveston makes sense. And I was saying this on Saturday or Sunday. I was texting. I had to do a mock draft, send it to Fiona for our video on Wednesday. Stay tuned for that, by the way. And this is who I took, Lockie Doveston at 13, and it's been my feeling the last few days. I might be wrong, but it's just what I'm feeling. I've got it in my gut, Lockie Doveston to the Bombers, and I think that would be a good pick, to be honest. At 14, and this makes sense too, you've got Jacob Farrow to Hawthorn. I think the Hawks really like Jacob Farrow. They've put a lot of time into him. He's a very Hawthorn-coded player in many ways. I think it happens. I think Jacob Farrow going to the Hawks, and that'd be a really good pickup at 14, by the way. That's someone that we'd probably be looking at with 13, and if we don't take him, then the Hawks, go for a Josh Lindsay or someone, but Jacob Farrow to Hawthorn makes a lot of sense there. I'd only really be looking at Farrow and Lindsay, and if anything outside of that happened, it would probably surprise me a little bit. North Melbourne on the board, and I have got them taking, I don't know, I haven't really probably decided yet. A name that's calling out to me right now is Aiden Schubert. Because I'm trying to avoid midfielders. North don't need midfielders or midfield type players. I'm not going to draft Ollie Greaves, even though maybe North would do that. It would be very North Melbourne. Should I do Ollie Greaves? Would the Roos do that? Nah, I'm going to go Aiden Schubert. I think that makes the most sense. I think you need key position stocks at North. You need everything at North Melbourne, really. And Aiden Schubert is probably best available talent aside from, you could argue, Josh Lindsay. Would the Roos go for a Josh Lindsay? Maybe. That would make sense too. But I just think Aiden Schubert is that bigger player, bigger upside with his size. Probably takes a bit more time in a system, but they have others that will be coming through next year, you'd think as well. So yeah, I'm going Aiden Schubert at pick 15. GWS on the clock. I've got them taking Oscar Taylor, and I've thought this for a while now. I think this makes the most sense. I think Oscar Taylor is a very GWS coded player. They like a good bolter. They like a good back half runner. He is very quick. He'd really fit in with that orange tsunami. So I've got the GWS Giants taking Oscar Taylor with pick 16. West Coast at pick 17. I think this is where you go with a lot Josh Lindsay. You could argue a Latrell Pickett or someone, in that forward half of the field. Maybe they would, to be honest. That would actually have been a pretty good pick too. But I see Josh Lindsay sliding down the order, and I have to take him at some stage. And this is probably where I'm not very well equipped for these types of videos, because you think like a footy fan or a footy nerd, and right now if I'm picking Josh Lindsay, I'm thinking it like a footy fan, because I'm a fan of Josh Lindsay. Realistically, there might be better options than that for the Eagles. Do they need back half class? Yes, they do, I guess, but they need a lot of things, and you could go with a Latrell Pickett, who's really bumping up the order as well. So yeah, I'm going Josh Lindsay, but I don't feel great about it. Pick 18, the Western Bulldogs. I think they would have really loved Josh Lindsay. I think they would have really loved Oscar Taylor. And at this stage of the draft, if they're not there, maybe they trade out a bit. But before they do, we're going to have them bidding on Harry Kyle. I think if I'm looking at the Dogs, what they need is like a defensive half player or a distributor or a runner from that half of the field. And if they don't get one, then they're probably... Would they trade out of the first round? Maybe they would. But I'm going to have them bidding on Harry Kyle before I think about that. I think that, he's the type of player that they want. I think the Swans will match that bid anyway. And also we had Ben Waterworth on Fox Footy, suggesting that there could be an early bid on Harry Kyle earlier than this in the draft. So I'm going to have them going in the top 20. Now, you could trade that pick away if you're the Bulldogs, or you could take a Noah Hibbins-Hargraves. I don't know why I'm taking Noah Hibbins-Hargraves. I don't think that makes much sense for the Bulldogs, and I might look really silly in hindsight doing that. But I think, like, he's a Bulldogs-coded player, and that he's that forward half linking the chain type player. The Bulldogs like their transition movement. Ideally they have a back half player to do that, but they get a forward half one instead. And he's probably someone who honestly has the versatility and the scope to play in different positions, in the back half as well. I really wouldn't be surprised, because he does have some cleanliness and some composure and class to his game. So I've got the Dogs taking Hibbins-Hargraves at 19. Oh, I'm going to go Mitch Marsh to the Adelaide Crows here. I'm happy with that. I'm not happy with a lot of the picks that I've done in this draft, but I'm happy with that one. I think that is definitely on the cards. And the good news for Adelaide is that this range of the draft has so much SA talent. You've got Harley Barker, Jevon Philippou, Latrell Pickett. You've got Blake Threadgold. You go down, you've got, Matt Leray. There's probably a few more as well. But, those four up the top here, that makes a lot of... that's a great range for the Crows to be in. And choosing between, different positions, different, areas of upside. They could go with a Harley Barker. They've put a lot of time into him, I know. But they're going to go with a Mitch Marsh in my head, because, you kind of replace... that Taylor Walker, that need for a Taylor Walker replacement through the draft. And he's not the same type of player as Taylor Walker, but he's the same position in that he's that third tall forward who kind of impacts outside of general goal scoring a lot of the time as well. He's a really good ball user going forward, Mitch Marsh. So I think that makes a lot of sense. You get an SA talent, you get a really high upside talent, and you get a position you need as well. I think that's a great pick for the Crows. What do the Cats need here? Let's get a bid going. Let's go Jack Eisen. I think that makes a lot of sense. They're a team who do like to bid historically, I believe. They like to do a lot of things, Geelong, but I think Carlton are preparing for early bids on Jack Eisen, and we're going to go very early. We're going to go a Geelong Jack Eisen bid, and the Carlton Blues will match that bid, meaning they probably won't have another selection in this draft, I don't think. But for Geelong back on the clock, then you're looking at probably... Are you looking at an Ollie Greaves? Are you looking at a Jevon Philippou? I'm looking at a Jevon Philippou. As I said the name out loud, it just made a lot of sense. It's Geelong, I think, are a team who do really well in developing their talented youngsters a year after they're drafted. So Jevon Philippou might not play an AFL game next year. He might be stuck in the VFL, but the year after, he's going to be so ready and so hungry. And the way I see it, I've always said that he feels like a player who's months behind on his development, or a year behind on his development anyway. The way he plays kind of feels like an under-17, trying to impress those around him. Once he gets into a system and really starts humming, I think this guy could be an absolute star. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a top 5 player in this draft, Jevon Philippou, with the athleticism he's got, and also just the raw skill set he has as well. So I've got the Cats bidding on Jevon Philippou there. That makes a lot of sense. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because I think this is where we're starting to look at a range or a potential option for an Adam Swade bid. Would the Dockers bid on Adam Swade knowing that the Bombers might not match? Because if we're to match this bid, what would it cost? It would cost... Alright, we'd be in deficit. We'd be quite a bit in deficit. So would the Dockers do that knowing that we might not match a bid? I don't think they would. I think they'd rather get Latrell Pickett in through the doors. I think that'd be a much better option in the forward line. They're a team who wants small forwards. The Dockers, I reckon, they'd be going for any small forward they can get in that range of the draft. Adam Swade, if Latrell Pickett's off the board, maybe they bid on Adam Swade, but I think with him there, maybe even a Leon Kickett later on as well, in this range a little bit. I think they would probably avoid an Adam Swade bid, knowing that they could well end up with him on the list and Latrell Pickett could go elsewhere. So in this situation, I've got the Dockers not bidding on Adam Swade, but taking Latrell Pickett outright. Now, I don't think the Hawks would bid on Adam Swade either, if I'm being honest. And this is the last pick of the first round, so this is where we're going to wrap it up in a second. I think the Hawks would probably avoid a bid on Adam Swade, but I think I look at, or even a Bo Adensall. I'm going to go a Max King bid. I think this could come at this stage as well. This is a really high upside player. He's a pure athlete. He's someone who's got a lot of weapons as a forward half player who can play midfield as well. He's got serious speed and he's good in the air. And I think the Hawks would really like that to not only boost their forward line, but their midfield a bit too. I think the Swans match the bid anyway, so it doesn't matter ultimately. But I could see a bid coming there. And if I think a team was to bid early on Max King, it would be Hawthorn. But now as we go with the last pick of the first round, I'm going to do it, guys. I'm going to annoy a lot of you and myself. I'm going to draft Harley Barker to the Hawks. I think that just... He's a bit of is he a Hawthorn-coded player? Not really, I guess, but he's that outside run and that role-specific player that you can get at this stage of the draft for cheap. I look at Hawthorn's wing stocks. Yes, they've got Massimo D'Ambrosio, but defensively, he's always been a bit deficient. I've seen quite a few really good wingers run rings around him. And then on the other side, you've got a Harry Morrison, who's, he's probably more rounded, but doesn't have the weapons. And I think Harley Barker's a bit of both. He doesn't have the foot skills of a Massimo D'Ambrosio, but he's really rounded. He's probably more rounded in his upside and his, ready-made ability than a Harry Morrison, while possessing more, I guess, strengths to his game than Massimo D'Ambrosio as well. I think he could be an incredible player, Harley Barker, and I think the Hawks would really like just having him on the list, sitting out the season with that ACL, but, being able to bank on him next year or in 2027 as what could be a new draftee. Realistically, the Hawks didn't even make any debuts in 2025 anyway, so it's not like they're going to be looking for players to blood early in the year. I think Harley Barker with his ACL going to Hawthorn makes a lot of sense, and I'd be really happy with that if I was a Hawthorn fan. So that is the first round of the draft predicted. It starts with Willem Dersma going to the Eagles. You've then got Zeke Uland being bidded on going to the Suns. Harry Dean right after receiving a bid going to Carlton. The Eagles then select Cooper Duff-Tytler with their second pick, and then it is Tigers who bid on Dylan Patterson but then take Sullivan Roby and Sam Grill. Essendon on the clock bid on Dan Annable and then take Dyson Sharp and Xavier Taylor. That's a really good combo in my opinion. Melbourne takes Sam Cumming and Cameron Nairn. I think that makes a lot of sense as well. It could be any of those two players there and Cameron Nairn. I still think that's the way it goes with, either Xavier Taylor Nairn or Dyson Sharp Nairn, but I'm going Sam Cumming and Cameron Nairn here. Lockie Dovison at 13 for the Bombers might be a bit of a rogue shout. We'll see if that holds up. Hawthorn, Jacob Farrow isn't a rogue shout. That makes a lot of sense to me, and he's someone who could definitely end up at the Hawks. Aiden Schubert to North. This is where it really starts falling apart a bit because I don't know. This is a club who traded up the order to get pick 11, but I don't really know who they're targeting, and I don't know if they know who they're targeting, but I've gone Aiden Schubert. I've gone Oscar Taylor to the Giants, which makes sense. Josh Lindsay to the Eagles is a bit iffy. Harry Kyle getting a bid early in the top 20, as Ben Waterworth predicted. Noah Hibbins-Hargraves at pick 19 to the Bulldogs is another one that I'm not sure on. Mitch Marsh to the Crows, I'm sure, and I think that's a great idea. You've got Jack Eisen getting a bid from Carlton. Jevon Philippou from the Cats, going to the Cats. Latrell Pickett, the Fremantle Dockers passing on a bid for Swade and going for Pickett. And then the Hawks bidding on Max King and taking Harley Barker after that bid falls through. That is the first round of the draft. So look, a few things that'll shape it. Obviously, you've got players here who definitely could be taken. Ollie Greaves, Blake Threadgold, will a bid come at Adam Swade early? I don't know. I really don't know. I think if I'm looking at teams like Fremantle and Hawthorn, I think that's when the bidding could start. But I think that's probably when the bidding starts if we've got picks to match. I don't know if Fremantle and Hawthorn would take Adam Swade as a general player in this draft over options that they've got at their disposal. Like, would the Dockers take Adam Swade or Latrell Pickett or Leon Kickett or someone like that? Would the Hawks just take Adam Swade in general, knowing that they've got those small forward types on their list already? I'm not 100% sure. I think if we don't have the picks or the capital to match a bid early on Adam Swade, he's probably a better chance of sliding through. And as you see there, pick 36 means if a bid comes around probably this range here, we're golden to match. We can match. But Yeah, it's tough. It's a really tough draft to predict. I'm not 100% sure at all how it's going to play out. I wish I was, but I really am not. But yeah, head over to Bomber Banter tomorrow night 1 of the draft. I'm really excited about that. That is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to see who the Bombers take. We're going to have 3 early picks, hopefully. Maybe more if a bid comes early for Suede. We'll see what happens with that. But that is all, guys. Let me know what you think down below. Obviously this is a mock draft done before. Actually, I've got a notification that Cal Toomey has released his mock draft. I haven't seen it yet, but I know it's going to be different to this. It definitely won't be the same as this. I don't feel too confident, but I don't think anyone does. So, yeah, that's all. Cheers for watching, guys. Let me know what you think down below. Who would you have taken if you were in my shoes for Essendon? Obviously this is a prediction, but who would you have taken with 9, 10, and 13, given what was available on the board? Yeah, cheers for watching, guys. Make sure you like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and as always, go Bombers.